we got in trouble for I was part of the May 1st, like the May Day boycott kind of thing down here in Southern California with like rights for farm workers. We were like, hey, Dogwood supports the boycott, whatever. Like, I'm down for the farm workers. Like, I support living wages. I support, you know, and I think Jesus would too. And we got shafted by on MySpace. Like, I'm not going to listen to your
Wow.
music anymore. I'm not going to. You part of the boycott. I'm like, well, okay, you go do their job. You know, see how much money it's worth. Or like it was almost like a dumb argument. I didn't even want to argue back, but there was some I just had to respond to. You know.
Yeah,
It's
you're
like,
talking farmers and a bunch of teenagers act like they have to go out and buy fucking groceries and they're going to spend an extra 30 cents on tomatoes because they got a raise. It's ridiculous.
exactly.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Casey.
And I'm Sam.
And it's Sunday now. Monday, we had gotten together with Jeremiah. We were recording an intro for a John Ross episode from this week. And we had been playing a bunch of clips of Jesse Lee Peterson and making fun of him. And right as we had finished recording, it's like, I don't know, maybe 10 o'clock my time, maybe a little earlier than that. And my doorbell rang. And
which is terrifying. That's a terrifying time to have anyone ring your doorbell or knock at you.
yeah, well, especially, see, you're coming to visit me soon. And because I think we've decided that that's definitely going to happen, right?
I think so. I still try to get it sorted out, but that's the hope.
But if so I live in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Like, I'm about 20 minutes from the nearest town with any sort of business in it or anything like that. There's one house across the street, but the guy doesn't live there. He just kind of comes and goes as he pleases. A couple people down the road, but I mean, there's nobody out by me. And you could scream and holler and shoot guns in the air all you want, and like nobody's gonna hear you. So like, where we live, it's weird to get a visitor at any time of day that's not like dropping off a package. And now it's dark, you know? And
I'm already
so,
that would have scared the shit out of me, dude. I live in an area that's heavily populated, and if I get a knock on my door after it's dark, I'm just like, well, I guess this is it. It feels like it's time. Make my peace, I guess. With the
I
way
hope
I've
it at
lived
least
my
makes
life.
the news.
Yeah, dude. That's the last thing on earth I want. I should live in an area like you where I'm guaranteed to not have to interact with people, but
Well, so I answered the door, and I mean, right when I walked up to the door, I'm like, "Oh my God, who is this guy?" He's a great big tall guy. He's like filthy. He's got on overalls with no shirt underneath. And he's only got one foot. The other foot's missing, and he's got like one of those leaf spring foots, like the Blade Runner deal, which are super cool.
Yeah, and also so my father-in-law he's missing a leg. So he's got a fake leg, but he's got the one that has like that, that foot-colored foot on the bottom of it, and it's supposed to look like a leg. And I don't know.
Looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid foot.
Yeah, it's like a little it's like if someone blew up a doll foot and it just plopped it onto a metal stick. And it's just funny because it's like fake legs are expensive and insurance companies aren't great about coughing up money for things like that. He's had to like fight tooth and nail to get new ones. Yeah, I know. But he's had to fight tooth and nail to get new ones.
Crutches are $30, so
yeah. It's also funny because he has to every once in a while, every few years or whatever, he has to reapply for the handicap parking thing, so that you hang above your rear view mirror. And he's just like, it's like his leg's never growing back. So it's just funny that they're like, you have to reapply for this every few years because this is potentially not a permanent condition. It's like, okay, but yeah, my understanding is those scythe ones are for like running. And they're expensive. Like they're really good quality ones. It's my thought. So having someone just having the way your story is going, something's going to tell me that maybe having a nice quality fake leg and the rest of this guy don't exactly go together. Perhaps he murdered somebody and stole it. He found another one-legged man and killed him and took his.
It could be maybe he made
foot.
it himself.
Yeah,
Like he cut it off of an old Jeep Wrangler or something like that. But he
like suspension.
he's got this like just beat truck. It's like an old Sonoma or something like that, and it's just blown out. And he's towing a little bitty trailer full of gravel. He's got like a big pile of gravel on it. It's got no sides on the trailer. The gravel's just kind of like stacked on top. And I guess like he just figured, if I lose some, who cares?
Okay.
He's got this, like the tires on this thing are old to begin with. And there's one tire on the back that I mean, it's literally just in pieces. Like this thing just, it exploded. It didn't go flat. It's like totally ripped to shreds and it's sitting on the rim. And he
still has gravel in his trailer.
Yep.
Shocking.
Yeah. He's like,
Magic
hey,
gravel.
I was wondering if you could help me change my tire. I need a jack. And I happen to have one sitting in the back of my little truck thing. And I said, oh yeah, I've got one. It's already out there. It's sitting out there. And he's like, oh, okay. That's what I'd call a God thing.
Okay. Yep.
And I'm like, here we go.
Yeah.
he goes, are you a God-fearing man? And I was like, I used to be, and he's like, okay. So I ran to get the jack and I come back and like, you could just tell like he's amped up and ready for like, he's going to give me a sermon.
God orchestrated this.
So. I think that's kind of what he thought. He said it a couple of times that like, yeah, God brought him there for some reason or another, and this guy, he's got like real curly, like unkempt hair and stuff like that. And I mean, nothing about him. He looked like an old farm boy or something like that. But okay. I don't know. I mean, I've since like looked it up. So I have a guess as to what kind of drugs he was doing, but like how people have ranch corners.
Yeah.
They get like the little bubbly white stuff in the corner of their mouths.
Yeah.
And it's just like ever present. This dude had like ranch mouth.
Does it like connect when they open their mouth? You see like the stalagmites and stalactites of it just like form as they open and close their mouth.
He looked like he did the cinnamon challenge with like that powdered coffee creamer. It's just like white in his mouth and it's like stringy and like every time he opens his mouth it's like a grilled cheese sandwich.
Oh my God, like he just motorboated a Cinnabon.
So yeah, he gave me it was a pretty long sermon. And so to this guy's credit, I kind of liked the guy. I thought he was kind of fun to talk to.
Oh yeah.
He was not a dumb dude or like an irrational guy in a lot of ways. And like the way that he presented like his whole view of God and spirituality and stuff, which was, I didn't exactly ask him to give me that, but he did. It was not bad. It was a unique take. I thought I was going to get this typical, like,
Jesus died for your sins, lived the life we couldn't live, died the death we should have died kind of bullshit.
That sort of thing. Yeah. Ugh. But it wasn't. Like, he talked about how he was homeless for a time period and how during that time period he said he got diagnosed with like stage 4 cancer. And so he like went out into the desert to die with his dog and lived in like a lean-to or something, had to like go fetch water from somewhere down the road or something, which, I mean, who knows if all of it's true or whatever. But his theory on why he didn't have cancer now was something to do with conventional medicine's bad for you. And, it was something along those lines.
Something tells me he never had cancer.
He also said that he was like a program coder, that he wrote programs for like some giant company. I don't know if he mentioned who it was that he supposedly wrote for, but
I'm getting Al Gore invented the internet vibes from.
It was a little like that. It was kind of like, you wouldn't know it by looking at me, but I'm actually a genius. And here's what I learned when
maybe he designed that leg. Maybe he might be, Because
Maybe
I
if
dunked
he
on
did,
him.
I mean, I'll tell you what, the guy like he's got 1 foot missing, and like I went out there with the jack and stuff, expecting like, oh, I'm gonna change his tire, right? I brought my little like impact gun and stuff out to do it, and I mean, he just like grabbed the stuff from me and like threw himself down on the ground and started like, dude, I mean, he did it all himself,
Hey.
like didn't even like ask for assistance other than just let me use your jack, you know. But it was a very wandering, unconventional, road to salvation sort of discussion, but with a lot of like science lingo mixed in there.
I wish you
And
recorded it.
I really thought about it. I was like weighing it when I went in to get the jack. I was thinking like I should record it because he had asked me if I was a God-fearing man. I'm like, I should just record this. But then I thought that was kind of a crappy thing to do. I'd much rather misrepresent his views, myself on a podcast. But yeah, it was interesting. He finished out the whole thing by giving me his number. He said he trains dogs.
A future guest.
Right? It's crossed my mind. He trains dogs for disabled people, he said. He told me if I saw him around town, he was the guy in the wheelchair being pulled by a team of dogs.
Like,
and I haven't seen him yet, but
a bunch of huskies.
Looking, believe me. Yeah, I think he's got a mix of breeds. He doesn't really restrict it to that, but
Does he have told a vehicle on the side of it? It says, "God entered a body like my body, my same size."
It was that kind of vibe. Yeah, it was Bob Hickman vibes.
Bob Hickman, that's right.
Which I don't know if we've talked about Bob Hickman on here, but if you don't know who that is, just look up Bob Hickman, God Entered My Body on YouTube and enjoy yourself.
It's a blast.
You can take off for a few hours. I'll give you the short version of it. God entered his body like a body his same size, like me floating into you or you floating into me. Holy Ghost baptism. I think that's it. It's concise and consistent.
Yeah. But some of it isn't. Some of it are like the meandering thoughts of a crazy person.
Yeah, his Instagram is fun.
He's kind of a mix of like, you get to see like a profile of his butt cheeks a lot.
He posts a lot of nude photos.
He's got a dog.
He does. He takes good care of himself.
I think that guy squats, but not like in someone's house, like maybe in their basement without their knowledge, but just in general, it works out.
He seems like an overall, like kind of a positive guy, but there's so many things about his videos that are just unsettling. Like there's always a scream mask in the background. I don't know. Like every time I see it, I just can't like take my eyes off it. I'm like, why is that there?
It's creepy. It's always bad lighting, and you can't tell if he lives in like a dungeon or if it's like just a 1-bedroom apartment or something like that. It's creepy.
Yeah.
Supposedly he's a truck driver.
I'm definitely going to reach out to Bob Hickman.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But yeah, my local Bob Hickman, Ed, he was actually kind of cool. I actually liked him. I was, you never know how those things are going to go. So it always makes me nervous, but he was cool.
There we go. Well, you met one of the good ones.
Yep.
All right. You have queued up a couple of clips for us today again. I like this game. I like this game of you queuing up clips that I've never heard before.
It's gotten, I'm kind of like having fun with it. Yeah. So, my favorite podcast to listen to is the Tim Dillon Show. I've talked about him and will continue to talk about him. I love Tim Dillon. And on his Patreon episode this week, he was talking about Ben Stein. So him and his producer hang out a lot of times at the Beverly Hills Hotel when they're in LA, and talked about like seeing Ben Stein there, on a lot of different occasions. And someone had sent him clips of Ben Stein's Twitter. He's been like making some statements on his Twitter. And I guess if you're not familiar with Ben Stein, he's the teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's like Bueller.
He's also the dry eye. What did he do the commercial for Visine or some shit?
Oh yeah, Clear Eyes.
Clear Eyes.
Dry red eyes. Try Clear Eyes.
Yeah,
he's just got that. I mean, he's like famous for having a boring voice.
Yeah, and he had a show called Win Ben Stein's Money.
I remember that. He apparently, before all this, he was a speechwriter for Nixon. He was part of the Nixon
Oh, really? Did not know
presidency.
that.
Yeah.
Was he like a smart guy? Is he like, well, I don't know what that means entirely, but I don't know if
he
he was like an author
before his brain rotted.
Yeah, that happens to some of them. He's getting the Jordan Peterson effect.
He has that. Yes, it's that. It's that one. That's what it is. I don't never really thought much of Ben Stein, except that my final year at Liberty, he put out a movie called Expelled.
That's right.
And it was like a documentary about like how they're not allowing us to talk about God in schools. I don't remember a ton about it, but I remember I went to it in the theater with some people.
He was I remember Christians really loving this. When did Expelled come out? I'm trying to find it right now.
It had to be like 2009.
It was he was in an episode of Full House, perhaps. Yeah, interesting.
Cool.
I get. Oh, he's like appeared in a ton of shit, like a lot of sitcoms. Like, dang, he's been in so much.
It doesn't really make sense how he's managed to stay in the public eye for so long. But he was also my commencement speaker at Liberty. So he puts out this documentary called Expelled. And then immediately that year, he's the commencement speaker at Liberty. I wish Jeremiah was here because Jeremiah got Glenn Beck for his commencement speaker. A little jealous. But old Ben's got some opinions about what's wrong with America. And trigger warning, I don't think they're going to jive well with our audience. So he tackles a number of topics. The first one that I heard was about the epidemic of violence in America. And I'm gonna play this one for you.
All right.
And I want to talk about crime. When I moved here in 1976, this was a very safe city.
He's at the Beverly Hills Hotel making this video.
Changed dramatically, and here's what's going on. For some reason, which would take a lot of explaining, but it could be explained, the government decides to basically stop punishing black people who commit crimes, and black people can commit crimes and not be prosecuted for it. Yes, they're embarrassed, at least, and yes, their parents are mad. They do not get anything less than murder. And this is a shocking thing. This is a very bad thing.
You heard it.
So
here, oh my God.
Thoughts.
Okay.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I'd like to see the evidence that he's talking about, because I'm pretty sure we disproportionately send black people to prison. There's not a whole lot to say about that. That's a very brazen take. I guess I wasn't aware that he was that much of a racist. So that's interesting.
I think he views himself as, fighting for actual justice or something. He has a lot of views tied that pivot back to black people, and it's like what you would hear like an old guy in the line at Hardee's in the morning, like say under his breath because he sees a news report out of the corner of his eye, like vague, no stats, just kind of like knee-jerk thoughts and opinions from a guy who probably, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he probably doesn't talk or interact with a whole lot of black people in his life.
Probably. Isn't he, I believe he's Jewish, is that right?
Yes.
And Stein, that's a very Jewish name. He also said that, that's what I thought what's interesting to me about his movie Expelled is that he does end up going hard on the intelligent design stuff, it seems, which is an unusual take for people who are Jewish. So,
well, I think he's a Christian.
Is he?
I think he's a Christian. He
must have got saved at some point.
Yeah, I don't know that for sure, but I know that he posts like he is very Republican. He posts
of course
a lot.
He's a Christian.
Well, he posts like a lot of the videos on his Twitter, especially in a given time period, were about he would like post publicly like a video of him praying for Israel. And he posted a couple videos like shaming Jews for voting for Democrats when, Republicans are the friend of Israel. He talks about how Richard Nixon is the savior of Israel and was a great president. I mean, possibly.
He did say that he said that President Barack Obama was, quote, the most racist president there has ever been in America.
Yeah,
So-
he's like straight up like Michael Savage takes.
Yeah,
But,
that's a fun take, considering we did have presidents that actually owned slaves, and so maybe they take the cake on that one. Just a thought.
I think he's grading racism on a curve, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, so, don't think too hard about the rate of incarceration for Black people and especially Black men. The problem in America is that we're just not punishing them hard enough, I guess.
How do you get to a point where you can look at the world around you and say that? That's what's so mind-boggling. It's like you're living in an alternate reality at that point, and there's no point in talking to people.
I think it's like it's the same routine that we all kind of have a tendency to fall into, where it's like you look at the same sources all the time. And for a lot of people, like, that's Fox News. And like Fox News is their window out of their tiny little box that they live in into the rest of the world. And like that's what they run stories on. That's like their, daily story is about like some one-off case where someone wasn't prosecuted for something. And so now to him, it's an epidemic that's everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, never mind that you can't just pull up crime reports and incarceration rates. Like, it's widely available data just through Google. So that's what's just weird about people who make, I mean, you could show the evidence for this if we had the time. It's like, it's not like it takes a lot of time.
It's all on
effort. Yeah.
I've seen the documents.
Got the documents right here.
Shuffle papers off camera.
Empty manila envelope.
The thing is, it's like you
folders.
can't get lost in the statistics, bro.
Yeah. I try not to. Statistics are part of the problem.
Do you want some more? Because he has some ideas about education.
Oh, I would love to hear these ones.
Okay.
I'm sure
this is
just
important for you, actually, because, I mean, considering you're eventually going into that, I mean, assuming you pass this class you're procrastinating an assignment for right now.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
This country is, in many ways, in a state of collapse. And the most recent example is that some school districts, quite a few school districts around the country, are scrapping the grade of Fs. There's no such thing as a failing grade anymore. And we don't know exactly why, but certainly most of the reason is because so many Black students were getting Fs. And that drags down the average of the whole school and the whole school district. And it makes Black people look stupid. But it's incredibly insulting to them to tell them that we're scrapping the whole system of education as it's always been throughout all history just because we don't think you can learn. Obviously, there are plenty of Black people who can learn. Before the recent problems in the Black community, when we started blaming everything on whitey, Blacks were able to learn. Now, when we blame everything on whitey, Blacks can't learn somehow. This is ridiculous. This country is, in many ways, in a state of collapse. And the most recent example is...
Okay, well, it looped.
Okay. Well, if there's one thing we can agree on, that I can agree on with old Ben here, is that our country is in a state of collapse. But I think we're probably getting... I think if we showed our work, we'd be coming to very different reasons for why we got there.
Yeah, it's good of you to find some common ground, though.
That's what I try to do.
Yeah. So I don't know where this one comes. Like, I've seen like the conservative news outlets that run stories about like, where every crime story they have is like about a Black person or a illegal alien or whatever. But this, I don't know where this is coming from at all.
I mean, I don't know that schools are getting away with even doing away with school districts. That seems probably not true right out the gate. First lie. What do you even say about this? He's such a psycho at this point that like he's just living in his own world. This is what sucks about living in this generation, this century, whatever. It's like everyone who's had any level of notoriety or fame, like now just can take to the internet, and then these ideas, like not the ideas in of themselves. It's not like people are hearing that and they've like, oh, that's a really good point, Ben, and then they've changed their mind. But like the fact that this can, I guess we're contributing to it right now, that it just like it goes everywhere once it happens, and everyone's like, "Oh, look at this, look at this." And that's obviously what we're doing right here. But it's just like, God, people used to have these bad ideas, and they would just be like, tell some other drunk person next to them at a bar, and then go home and hate their life. Like,
Right.
and now you can just live tweet something, an event with the most ridiculous takes, and then everything just gets everywhere, and then that's what we're talking about. It's so ridiculous. Should hate ourselves for this. Thank you, Casey.
You're welcome. Yeah, I did. I did think about whether or not to play that one, because that one's pretty rough.
I don't know if it's any
pretty
worse
bad.
than the first one.
I just I don't know. Yeah, it's so weird how, like anyone who has any semblance of authority can just like, I mean, I don't understand how you have like even the self-confidence to go on there
Yeah.
and just like shout things that are obviously not true, like getting rid of F's. This is an education system that's been around throughout all of history. Like, really, yeah,
That was a good one.
Like the cavemen were using standardized testing, and if you got an F, they just threw you away.
Yeah, I mean, was it still but even in the 50s, there was like a large percentage of people still weren't even graduating high school. It was like,
Yeah,
it was not taken. There was no real standards for education for quite some time. So
I also think like,
yeah, we've had this forever, and it's always worked for white people until these black people showed up. How'd they get here? I don't know. We won't get into that, but they messed it up for everybody. It's like, okay, Ben, Jesus Christ.
I do wonder too, like, okay, in the, like, let's say it's 1949 and you're a kid that's just you're not flourishing in that environment, right? And, you kind of just aren't going to finish high school.
Yeah.
I mean, like, not having a high school diploma at that point isn't like this black mark on your record that's going to keep you out of a decent job. Like, there's tons and tons of like blue collar manufacturing jobs where you can make enough money to buy a house. Like, nowadays, if you don't finish high school or get a GED, like that's something that goes on every single job application and stuff like that, And
yeah, it's like it's a sentence to poverty, really.
Yeah, like you can't afford to just like let people fall through the cracks because they didn't do well at, biology class or whatever.
Right. Like my wife teaches students with social emotional disorders or disabilities, whatever. And they're not going to college. Like, these kids have a hard life. There's a lot of different reasons for why they have the behavioral issues that they do. The end goal is to get these kids a degree so they can actually just get a decent paying, I mean, might even be a minimum wage job. But if you're like 25 and you don't have a high school diploma and you're applying for a job, and there's a 18, 19-year-old who's applying for the same job who has a diploma, it's like, they're not going to hire you. And that's not I think what's so frustrating is like, even on a smaller scale, even on a situation like that, you would talk to a lot of conservatives that would want to blame individuals for not trying hard enough in high school. Because let's be honest, I mean, high school's not that hard if you just do it. So like the factors that are going on in kids who are unable to perform at that level just to graduate, there's a systems that made them, and it's not entirely their fault. So like, it's probably not their fault almost at all. Not entirely. It's just like, there's systems that made them. There's reasons that in this situation. And to say that to just say, well, an F's an F, sucks to suck, that you're giving these kids like a death sentence of sorts.
Yeah. And it's like,
and for
all
what?
of that.
Like, what does it cost you to give them that? Like, they're not taking that to college. They're not like the whole system we have around public education and the importance of graduation. And I don't know, it's our system's falling apart in a lot of ways. It really isn't a great one given the way society's progressed.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's the educational side of this. And like, you don't even like, I don't even know what you say to the fact that like, he looks at that entire group as black people. Like,
yeah.
That's just insane. I mean, it's hard to look at that as anything except like, you're just a racist. Like, that's all there is to it. That's the only
Yeah.
reason why you could possibly look at it that way, you know?
And that's what he wants to do. So he's literally gonna blame every single problem in the country that on black people. That's what he's going to do. Well, everything was great when white people ran everything and owned black people, and things were pretty good, if you ask me. It's just he has the very Make America Great Again vibes. It's like, Jesus Christ, dude.
And he really just sees like the U.S. as the bastion of all these problems. Like, so listen to this one. This is the second piece of that clip that I just played.
Blacks have to be like Koreans. After the Korean War, Korea was in a shambles. It was a mess. People said it would never go anywhere. But they pulled themselves together. They worked, they were disciplined, they studied, they became, within a few generations, one of the industrial powerhouses of the world. They are even now still growing. They are going to, at some point fairly soon, surpass Japan as an industrial superpower. That's because they work. They don't say, oh, we're going to just give you a ride for free. You don't have a free ride. You don't have to do anything. You have to work in Japan. You have to work in Korea. You have to work in China. You have to work in the Philippines. You have to work in Germany. You have to work in Italy. You have to work in Ireland.
Oh my God.
France. Those countries get somewhere. Countries where people are told you don't have to work. We'll do everything for you. And all you have to do is vote for us. Those countries go straight to hell in a handbasket. And that's what's happening to us.
You know what advantage the rest of the world has that we just don't have is they don't have Democrats.
Yeah,
That's basically it.
They don't have politics. Oh my God. It's like you don't even know what to say to this insanity.
Just
that you have to work
strong work ethic and family values like they do in China.
Yeah. He literally just tried to list off. It's like, okay, dude, we get it. You know, countries, cool.
Yeah. Well, if you're like lambasting the welfare state, you know, even in his position, like, I mean, Italy, France, Ireland, like you name off like all these European countries that definitely have more of a social safety net than we do.
Yeah, I know. And I don't know if you recall, but I can't. That's such a, I don't know.
Oh, let me have it. Let me have it.
I don't know if you recall when Israel got the biggest handout of all and got their country back. I don't know if we should edit that out.
I'm not sure they use it that way.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my God. Yeah, Ben would disagree with you there.
I don't know.
Oh man. So yeah, he's a crusty old prick. That should not be listened to. He should not have been my commencement speaker. I really wish we would have gotten, I don't know, Mark Levin or somebody. Yeah.
Before his fall from grace, you could have Milo, dude. That would have been sick.
I do think I know exactly like what's going on with Ben Stein right now, and here, this might explain it.
I had the COVID booster, the Moderna, about 4 or 5 days ago, and I am still feeling wild side effects from it. Like I had the worst flu in the world, extreme shortness of breath, a dizziness, fatigue, extremely irrational thinking. It has just been
that explains it.
That's the one.
I had the COVID booster, the Moderna.
All right, clean slate for Ben Stein.
The vaccine did it to him.
I'm surprised
you want to point fingers? Point it at Big Pharma.
I'm surprised he got any of those. He's on his booster, unless he just jumped straight to the booster and skipped the others.
He's old. Like, you can't afford to be an ideologue, on vaccines if you're old and dumpy. You gotta hedge your bets. What's the difference? You're gonna die soon, anyways.
Yeah, he's 77, so one can only hope.
One can only hope. So yeah, Ben Stein sucks. Wouldn't recommend his Twitter. 0 out of 10.
All right. I guess we will go ahead and introduce our guest, Josh Kemble. It's funny. I ended up connecting with him on Instagram, and it took me a while to realize it. But so he was in a band, an old punk band called Dogwood. They were a Christian punk band. And I that was one I've mentioned on this show, and I mentioned it in the interview too. But that was one of when I bought 4 albums on my own for the first time. That was one of them. Now, I did put my foot in my mouth in this interview because I had no idea what album I had in the order of their discography. But I always assume I'm like, I don't actually have any assumptions of where I am on the scale of like knowing when I found music. But I found this and was like, it was new to me, I guess. So I might have mentioned that I was like, instead of just asking about it, I asked a leading question about whether or not it was that. And it was their last, and it was a compilation of things done with
it's all good. Josh was very
like,
gracious.
He was cool about it, but it was like, you know, it was songs from a bunch of their albums. They redid a couple. I felt like a big giant dum-dum, and he was very nice about it. So that was cool. But Josh was great. It was fun to talk to him. It was cool to connect with the guy who I shifted out of punk music kind of after getting that. So I didn't really know what went on with them or what happened, because that's towards the time that I shifted into like metal and hardcore. So it was just a fun connection to make. And it was fun to be able to have him on and talk to him. So hope you enjoy our conversation with Josh.
Yeah, as always, if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to the show at, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. If you want to get in on the conversation, join our Discord. You can find the link on our Instagram. And we also kind of a side topic, but something that we're pretty excited about. Our friend Phil Wilmot, who was on an episode last year, he's an activist over in Africa, and he's working on a documentary over there, and they're trying to get some funding together, doing some crowdsource stuff. And it's definitely something that's worth checking out. Tell them a little bit about it, Sam.
Yeah, so they're working on Phil's helping to raise money and work on a film called The Woman Who Poked the Leopard. And it's a documentary film following a woman named Dr. Stella Nyanzi. And I probably said that wrong, and forgive me if I did, but she is a feminist activist in Uganda. So she's been a political prisoner before. She's her activism is very irreverent. And she had, I want to just find the little, here we go. Phil McLance. I'm just going to read it real quick. After a life of controversial radical activism lands her in jail, Ugandan queer rights academic and poet Dr. Stella runs for parliament. Police brutality and tragedies that follow force her to choose between her children's safety and the revolution. So this is just a film documenting her and her work and her continuing work. So that link is in our bio on Instagram. I made a post about it that seemed to get less traction than most because I feel like Instagram doesn't like things when
they throttle anything that involves like not giving them money. So
yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It'd be great if you guys could all check that out. And if it sounds like something you're interested in contributing to, I'd appreciate it. I know Phil would, and I think it's going to be a great film once they are able to get the funding to make it.
Yeah. So that being said, enjoy our episode with Josh.
Hey everybody, we're back with our guest, Josh. Josh, I'm super excited to talk to you because I've told this story probably 3 or 4 times in the podcast now. Whenever we talk about the types of music that got us into the scene, the first albums I bought that I bought on my own without consulting my parents or anything. Well, one of them was Reverse Then Forward, Then Forward Again.
Oh man.
But so I was like, it took me a second to make the connect because you got your podcast, and I'm excited to talk to you about what you're doing there. But I made that connection like super late. I'm like just checking out your page, scrolling through it, and then all of a sudden I realized like in your bio it's like you sang for Dogwood, and I'm like, holy shit! I've mentioned this album. Was that your first album?
That album was actually our last one on Tooth and Nail. That was our kind of culmination, kind of best of, plus some bonus songs. So no.
Okay. No. Yeah. Shows you how
super fan over here.
Yeah. But
just kidding.
That is kind of what I'm like, where I would buy like an album. I think that's maybe different. The streaming changed things a lot, but the amount of times I was like,
"What's streaming?"
You buy one album and you would listen to it over and over and over and over.
Oh yeah,
and then and then you realize like 5 years later you didn't know they had 3 more albums or something like that. You're just
Yeah.
like, oh shit. Like you wouldn't hear about it maybe in the same way. But anyway, so yeah, I mean that means you guys were pretty early on with Tooth and Nail.
Yeah. I mean, we weren't like year one or generation one necessarily with them, but we got on there after our technically the third album plus a live one or whatever. But yeah, we knew all the bands on the label because we were all playing together and stuff. So we were just on a different label. We were on a local label in San Diego for our first 2 records, our first 2, and then we did an independent one, and then we got signed with Tooth and Nail. And then we just went from there. Yeah. So the one you had is kind of like, you know, we were done with our contract, and we had, it was kind of like, let's put some songs on from each record. Plus we'll do like anything that was on a compilation, and maybe a couple, I think there was like 2 or 3 different ones that had never been released on the label. So there was stuff on there from Rescue, which is the first label, and Face Down Records we did an album with. And so that was on there.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of a funny story about that record, but fun times. We're here. We made it. It was the first album to end our contract on Tooth and Nail.
So, and that was it. I mean, did you do well? We'll put a pin in that.
Let's table that.
I'm curious to know if you had any other musical endeavors. But before we get there,
yes,
as a young evangelical who found Tooth and Nail, you guys' music was great. Like it was like, oh, like you get that. You got the punk vibe, but then you also were like, got the Christian lyrics, but didn't feel corny. Like you're like, I can do this because it's cooler than, I don't know, that stuff that my parents have been trying to give me or whatever. So it like hit me in that sweet spot, right?
I appreciate that.
So yeah. So when did when did you guys get started with music, and like what was your church background, your faith background?
Okay. Yeah,
and all that kind
going
of stuff?
way back. Well, man, my mom was a rock and roller, like a kind of like a rebel in the family, Mexican American family, and she would always, you know, she was just always going to concerts, and then her younger sister, my aunt, used to, when she was watching me, she would like sneak out of the house with me and take me to like parties and concerts and stuff like that when I was little. And so my mom was like doing so many concerts and stuff like that around like Southern California. I remember being backstage at like, you know, Carlos Santana shows and like just like big parties, and because that was a big Mexican culture vibe down here in San Diego. So it's just a big group parties, and there was, or if there was like a big cookout with their families or in the neighborhood, there would be like live music. So it was always around, at least on that side of my family. And then even so, then that was always all around with that side of the family, basically. And then, you know, go through school, and then we started, you know, I was always a fan of music, different kinds. And then, but going to, right when I was finishing high school, that's when a couple of guys asked me to join in, sing in the band, which would become Dogwood. So I didn't have any musical experience technically before that. I did sing.
Oh, really?
I did sing at open house in 6th grade. I sang a song from An American Tale by Fievel the Mouse.
Fievel.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It was
What
terrible.
was the song?
Somewhere Out There.
And will you sing that for us now? No.
I only know like a couple parts, but like the actual song that was sung by like the pop artist that did it, it was really like, it's like a really good like movie ballad. The mouse sounds kind of weird because it's a mouse, somebody singing in a mouse voice singing the song. But you know, basically he's staring out into the sky somewhere out there, you know, his family, because he's like separated from his family. I don't know why, but I sang that at open house in 6th grade and brought the house down. They're like, wow, he sounds like a mouse. And I never really got over that because my singing voice is kind of like on the higher, like kind of higher tonal range, like nasally almost, like kind of fat mic a little bit, or, you know, in that range instead of like a rough growl that it would become, I guess, later in my musical career, if you will, as I grew, because I was a kid.
Did you pick that song yourself, or was that chosen for you?
No. It was we had a chorus class or quiet music class or something. It was one of the songs that she was teaching because it had, I guess, she was trying to teach us some musical theory, and something in that song, it has like almost all the music theory parts she was saying. Like it
revolutionary.
Dude, yeah, she was ahead of her time, right? So she was teaching us these parts, and because of the way it dips and the valleys and the highs and the lows, and then like there's 2 singers, and yeah, I don't remember everything about it, but that was my first foray without knowing it. But I had always been a fan of stuff on the radio, like The Clash and other high energy songs that were on the radio. But nothing. And then, and of course, like my mom and that aunt that I was talking about, and even my uncle, her brother they all had really good record collections.
Okay.
So vinyl was always a big part of my life since I can remember.
And now it's come back so strong.
Yeah, it's really cool too, because to go back to like almost one of the first things you were saying is like the streaming thing is actually kind of beneficial for a fan like myself, a fan of music, because there's some stuff that you can't get your hands on anymore. You cannot find certain albums or stuff from your favorite artists or other artists that you're trying to discover. Or, I mean, I can't buy every single record out there in the world that I would love to buy.
Right.
Or even like new stuff. I try to support new independent artists, but I just can't afford that in my budget. But with streaming, I can buy one track or whatever. Like I can support them as much as I can. But also I have found a bunch of other stuff that I didn't know about from even bands that I love, through streaming,
definitely.
through Bandcamp or whatever the big services are. I just try to support them, however, and that was a way I found out a bunch of stuff, or covers or anything. So that's kind of what I like about streaming, and one of the things that I like about it. But I do love the tangibility of holding a record.
Yeah, dude. When I was in high school, there was always like you would blow like every paycheck. You'd go to like I went to FYE. I don't know if that was a thing, but there were always there's always like other places that people would go to pick up their albums. They had that would have a wide array where you're just like you would just spend a bunch of time sifting through. Maybe it's local. Did you have a place like that you would go hang out at and look for music that's like super memorable?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. So I think I don't remember as much when I was younger. When like my aunt would take me to places, I just remember her taking me to like actual video game arcades, and they had jukeboxes and stuff with records in them. But as far as me going to get music, it was like a place called we had that store. Wait, where are you guys from?
I'm from Massachusetts.
Okay. And then,
I grew up most of my childhood in Michigan.
Okay. I did not live in either of those spots, but we did have some chain stores that had records. We had, but the really cool, I always thought they were cool. I don't know if I didn't know much about big box stores and independent versus big stores then. It was just who had the stuff that I wanted. And I had, you could buy stuff at Sears. You could buy stuff at, I forget this name of this other big place, like Fedco or Gemco or something like that. That's where I also bought my toys. But the record stores was the Warehouse, Sam Goody, and Tower Records. So those were kind of my go-tos as far as I didn't know anything about like really independent stores that I love now, but those were kind of the stores that I thought were the hip cool stores when, I mean, they kind of are, but they weren't as local and small as some other ones, but whatever.
I feel like Sam Goody is like it's like the token shopping mall, music store. It's funny to me like how all of those music stores have shifted over the years to where like they used to sell mostly music related stuff, and now it's like
action figures,
pop vinyl figures and posters and anime pins. I don't know.
It's whatever,
like
it's whatever it sells. Stuff. It's like whatever people are interested in buying, like, or there's other stores that aren't record stores that now have a record section because that's what people are buying, kind of thing too.
Yeah. I remember when people started getting rid of record sections, like when Best Buy was just like, fuck this. We're not doing albums.
Exactly. I remember that. And reverse that is now Target has a record section, like they carry vinyl. Select few, but only big ones or whatever. But Walmart and Target have vinyl, and that's part of the problem with you not being able to get independent vinyl is because of those stores. But that's a whole nother podcast.
I think the last album I bought from a Best Buy was Failure On from Beloved. Just throw that
Yummy. Actually, that's where I bought mine too. I bought mine there at Best Buy in Oklahoma. We were on tour and we would stop. We would try to, if there was time before the show or a day off or whatever, we'd try to find a mall, or there was always a Walmart. But they didn't have the record. They had cassettes, but nothing we were looking for. But I found Tooth and Nail at the time and Solid State too. They had a pretty big presence at Best Buy and some other similar stores or whatever. But like, and Best Buy would do this deal sometimes with the record label, like end caps, and like this one's really cheap. And then like, you know, so I would get a couple of Tooth and Nail records, like I would buy them at the store because I always liked the artwork, and like I hadn't really heard of all the bands on the label because there were so many at the time too. We were one of many, right? We were the like in the punk realm, but there was like all these other genres, and like they were starting like even like hip hop and rap, and like I was always trying to get us to go on the hardcore side of things, but like, you know, we were like one of their punk bands. So
I think it's funny thinking back about it because it was so cool to see what was not mainstream end up in a Best Buy. It was like, it made you feel like, oh, this is gonna be something. This isn't just gonna be like in the shadows forever.
Lo and behold,
I think like the one that I remember buying like that, like similar circumstances, it was like a big deal to buy. It was When Everything Falls by Haste the Day. I'm pretty sure I bought that at Best Buy in like Lansing or something, and I just remember like holding it. This is what I've been looking for. Oh my god! You know, just like just turning the speakers on my truck up until they make that grinding, buzzing noise. And
did you pay $5.99 for it?
I feel like they were expensive. It was probably like $20 or something.
Well, there was full price, and then there was like sale price, and then there was like, you know, first week price or whatever. It's like you can get this one exclusively at Best Buy for $5.99, or it's sometimes $7.99, depending on if it was CD or.
That's right. I forgot about first week price.
They had some of those. The Fat Records, I would buy stuff there too for Fat Records.
Yeah, FYE, that's what they would do. You go in the mall and just be like, you'd look at all the stuff that came out that week, and it was like all cheaper, and that never made sense to me. But apparently,
because everyone was after those first week sales. They wanted to break records, and like SoundScan was a thing, and like it's like, you know, the goal of the indie label was like, dude, a new band doing 10,000 their first week. That's a low to mid bar. You know, this band did like 50,000 their first record. Let's see if we can do 70,000 on this record or whatever, you know? So they started setting their goals for that. So, hey, if Best Buy can buy, if they're already shipping, you know, 60 to 70,000 units just in distribution, chances are they'll sell some of that. And we might get some in returns back to the label, but we shipped that many. So we could say that it shipped that many, you know?
Yeah.
Inside info.
All right. So it wasn't until post high school that you joined a band. Now, Dogwood started as a Christian. So did you grow up Christian? Was that, or is this like kind of was this your pull into that world?
I should go on the Growing Up Christian podcast and talk about it. Hey, is that Scotch?
It's cheap.
It should be.
It's cheap. It's colorful gin. So in that Mexican American family, everybody's Catholic. You have no choice. You're just Catholic. And when my mom was single until I was about maybe 6 years old, and then she married a white guy, basically a non-Mexican guy, and so he started taking us to a Calvary Chapel system, kind of Calvary Chapel, you know, West Coast non-denominational hippie kind of.
Yep.
But the great thing about Calvary, the great thing about Calvary, the Calvary Chapel system is they are mostly all ex-hippies or druggies, ex-drug people or whatever. So they all have a musical background. Almost everyone in the church plays music. Like you can play guitar in front, or our church would put on a ton of concerts, like for all different, you know, acoustic, you know, hippie music. And then by the time I got into high school, it was more like, let's put on punk rock or metal shows and stuff like that. So Calvary Chapel was always down with that. So that was like a real benefit at what I learned through growing up in that. But yeah, it wasn't always like, you know, woo woo, let's do the church thing. It was more like, dang, this sucks because this guy's trying to take us to church and he's an asshole. And, you know, everyone in the church is hiding stuff. And, you know, my parents are going through a divorce, and, you know, there's like people I know at the church are doing bad things, but they're still claiming that they're good people and calling everybody else.
Hot goss.
I'm spilling the tea right now, but I'm not saying names.
Your parents were getting, so the white guy that your mom married, who brought you guys to Calvary Chapel,
I don't know whose idea it was, but like once he came in the picture, we started stopped going to Catholic mass and we started going to more of the Calvary Chapel system. That's all I know.
Was that
from,
like fresh off your mom's divorce? Like what was like the
excuse me. No. My mom, shout out, God bless her, I love her. She and my real father got separated when I was like a baby. So I never saw him. I've seen like a couple of pictures, which is great fodder for song lyrics, by the way. But then you grow. I grew. So it was her and I for about, 5 or 6 years. And then she met the guy. And then, so they got married. And then, so for the next about 9 to 10 years, he was my stepfather. And so they got divorced officially my junior year of high school. So
Okay.
a fantastic year to lose a father, right? Like, which is more great fodder for lyrics. And this was all also during
future punk singer written all over you, man.
This was all during us going to church. So all this was happening, and he would, he's passed away now, but it was not a good scene. We go to church every Sunday, and I did youth group on Wednesday nights, but backstage things were falling apart. We were, abuse in the house, drug use, like, just stuff like that, with his friends, and it was really confusing as a kid. Either
Sure.
I don't know if I'm supposed to be trying to go to church, or I'm just going because my parents are going, but I have a cool youth group friend. I still have a lot of good friends to this day from that youth group and from that church and stuff. Some of my mentors and everything's kind of stemmed out of this experience. And then, through high school, I started getting a little more artistic and, weird, and trying to be cool, weird, and friends with everybody because I didn't want to be in any group, man. But so I was writing. I do a lot of writing and art, and I didn't call it journaling, and I still don't call it journaling, but I was writing down a lot of stuff. Like
you had a diary.
Kind of like, sitting on my bed, hand on my chin, feet up in the air. No, just kidding. Yeah.
What color ink though? I mean, what color ink were you using?
Oh, a 4-color pen. It was a 4-color pen, of course.
There you
go.
Yeah.
Just picture any scene from Stranger Things when they're like, bouncing around in the mall and stuff like that. That was us. BMX bikes and stuff. So writing stuff. And then I was just putting down all my thoughts, and little did I know some of that stuff would become songs later, because I was dealing with all this kind of shit that was happening, to my friends. Hey, you guys are not supposed to have sex before marriage. Oops, you had sex before marriage. Oh, you're pregnant. What are you going to do? Oh, you had an abortion. Now what do we do? Oh, okay. I mean, you don't want to. Yeah. There was things like that happening, and nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody.
Oh, of course not.
No adults in our, like, we had some really, really good people in our lives, but nobody was talking about. They say, don't have sex before marriage. It just goes straight from that to you go to hell. There's nothing like, but if you do, and here's some options, blah, blah. I don't know, because then you get ostracized for being the pregnant teens or whatever. And then, your parents are getting divorced, divorce is against the Bible or whatever, or however you word that. But we're here to support you. So, now, and both your parents want to go to the church. Who gets the church in the divorce? There's all kinds of wackiness, now people are dating in the youth group, and there's just all kinds of drama because we weren't like a mega church or anything like that. So it was kind of, tight knit family situations, but a lot of broken homes in our church. Like I said, a lot of, hippie revival and kind of stuff in the Calvary system, which was, I always thought was cool. I always thought, oh, wow, you used to party with so-and-so rock star or whatever. And, now you're up here preaching. But then now looking back at some of the sermons, even when I stopped going to that church, it was like, wow, they were saying some really misogynistic things, or like, wow, they were condemning other churches or denominations, even, just because we're cool, the non-denominational. It's like, that doesn't mean people who have a denomination are bad. You know what I mean? Like, wait a minute. We all go to church, but nobody can agree. We all go to different Christian churches around this town, but nobody agrees on anything.
Yeah. I think there's such a weird thing that happened with people who got spit out of the 60s, with just the loss of purpose and direction and stuff like that. And so many of them funneled into these churches, and this huge proliferation of cults and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's weird to see like some of the drastic turns in ideology that there was. I mean, I think we make a lot of assumptions about what people thought during the 60s and in the hippie movements and stuff. And a lot of the things that, get cast as like really progressive and cool and stuff like that, like free love. I'm sure that was great for some people, but I think it was also pretty ugly for a lot of women, the way that they were treated and kind of like, strong armed into situations and things. I mean,
Sure.
so then you come out of that, you join some sort of a broad Christian movement and stuff, and all of a sudden you've got all these just weird like puritanical ideas that they're preaching and stuff. It's just hard to make sense of all of that.
Yeah.
Progression.
Yeah, they did it weird because it was like it was still like Christian fundamentalism, but they just reskinned it and it worked so good. Like they just got rid of like the outwardly pious stuff of like dressing up for church or wearing shoes or I don't know, whatever. Some of them were like, we'll do church on the beach. And people were like, oh, that's
yeah, we did that. Yeah.
So
still happens.
I mean, and it's cool. Like that's fine. But it's just funny how like they literally just dropped the optics of Christian fundamentalism in the way that it had been traditionally, but just kept all the same ideas. It really worked. I mean, it shows you how much of a it's kind of interesting because it shows you how much of a barrier that stuff was. People not wanting to get dressed up or feeling like it's too stuffy. And then you realize it's not even about any of the beliefs at the end of the day. It was just about whether or not you can show up in like a tank top and flip flops.
Which I still try to pull that off. And if I go to someone's church, my wife's like, dress up a little bit. I was like, this is my good tank top.
I refuse to wear shirts to church anymore.
Hey, Jesus didn't wear a shirt.
I just take it off right when I get in. And if someone says anything, I take my pants off too.
Yeah, the Bible's not against tank tops.
Shirt.
Show me in the Bible where it says no tank tops.
You got them.
Can't do it. What I even saw some Calvary chapels or some churches. I mean, on tour we've seen it all. We've seen all the churches, but the churches who are like, ooh, we're non-denominational or whatever. It's like that's the denomination though. You're making, by saying that, you're kind of creating. I mean, the whole Calvary Chapel system is kind of created. And that's the definition of religion, is we created it, right? You know what I mean? Like we're putting the kind of the limits on, but I could see from an early age, like when I was not when I was like 6 to 10, but like once I started going to middle and high school, when I realized that I was going through so much stuff, and I realized that there was trauma in the house and stuff like that, I could see that there was good. I could really see the good coming out of people who were trying to do good and stuff like that. Like, or when, if a church got too big for its britches, kind of, and it was all about the pastor. Let's go see, we don't say, hey, I'm going to go to church on Sunday. Let's say, let's go see this. You say the pastor's name, let's go to that, as if it's a concert performance. And which some of them, honestly, church performances can be, obviously, jump to 2022, but like this is before then. So I was realizing that, and I could be guilty of it too, is, you get the adrenaline from being a good person or being kind of self-righteous, or as they say, being the Pharisee. It's like, it feels good to help other people, or it feels good to know that you're doing something good. Like, see you at the pole, or like whatever, the flagpole prayer thing is like, you invite people to do that. It's so awkward as a school person to invite somebody else to church, because if they don't know anything about church and you're like trying to explain it to them, why do you go to church, or what are you doing? It's like, ping pong, pizza. I don't know. Come hang out, and there's hot chicks, and I don't know. Like that's kind of how the only way we could really explain things back then is because they knew, like a lot of people that, like at our school, we knew there was a lot of people that we knew who had bad families or whatever, quote unquote bad families, like, ooh, they're going to church, or like, ooh. And it was just a bad scene. Some of the days with my mom and dad it was just a bad scene, like just screaming all the way to the church event or whatever. We'd show up at the church picnic. Hey guys, hey, the potluck with our hamburger helper casserole. Everything's awesome. We were not yelling at Josh in the back seat or whatever,
That is confusing, man. That must have been, it's just like people who have to go through that when it just creates like It's set. I mean, I'm interested to get into where you're at now, because that kind of stuff really sets a lot of people up for like, it's all an act, it's all a joke, and it seems to
Yeah.
lack any authenticity. I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it often, in a lot of ways, can. But it sounds like you saw aspects of it that were authentic too, which then probably adds to the confusion. Like,
Oh, it does, but at
how
the
much of
same
it's from
time,
within, how much of it is this all powerful.
yeah. Well, I mean,
thing.
there's still things that I'm confused about or whatever. But now, as a, I've matured a tiny bit since being 17. But like, now I can kind of see through people or see what they're really doing. Like, oh my gosh, that's a good person. This person that's been in my life, from when I was 9 years old at this church is still a good person. And I tell them, and they're like, I'm no angel. I just try to, love others and stuff like that. And I'm like, see, it could all be so simple. Everything could be so simple in Christianity or in your relationship with, whoever you're praying to or whatever you're doing on Sundays or whatever day. It's like, but we make it so stupid and complicated sometimes, or, oh, they have a better church than me, or you know what I mean? Or I don't want to fold seats on Sunday more. I don't want to wake up and go to church. I'll even show up late to online service, or whatever the case may be. It's like, it could all be so simple, but we make it so crazy. But,
my folding chair days are over, man. That's all
I'm never doing that again.
I tell you for goddamn sure.
Yeah, church planter. No, but like
father, church planter.
Yeah. Your that's your bio for everything.
Twitter bio.
Church planter. I mean, I don't always like to, speak negatively of my church experience, but I will. I totally can. And just like anything in life, I could paint you a picture of how bad things were, or I could tell you how good things were. And but I think there's gotta be a balance. Everything has to be a balance, If I said I had an awesome childhood growing up, there was some awesome moments, sure. And this guy who is an asshole and who was doing all this bad stuff to my mom also taught me how to play baseball and, build things and stuff like that. There were some good moments, but I would say as an overall balanced experience, I would say it was out of balance, and I think Christianity, has a lot more balancing to do these days. But those things that I was writing, before I knew that I was going to be doing some band stuff, I took some of those and then continued writing new things, but I was always writing conversationally, asking questions, pissing people off because I was kind of calling people out that were in the church, or calling myself out for doing something unchristian maybe. If you look from day one, from song one from Dogwood till my last song that I even wrote even last year, I have pissed off somebody in the church, mostly in the church. We were judged more by people like in Christianity than outside of it. We were getting judged outside because, Christian punk rock, but it's like we were still like we were still doing all the stuff they were doing. We were playing all the same shows, winning awards. That but we were part of that scene that we were getting made fun of course, for that, heckling, whatever. But in the Christian scene and circles, like not necessarily with our peers, with other musicians, but like the church people or the fans, it just when I look back on it or talk to people now who are kind of calling me out on my music, I'm like, you sound so ignorant, like. I'm trying to ask a question because when I was 17 and I wanted to know about abortion, nobody told me. It was just like, bad, don't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't that baby could have been a doctor. I was like, well, that's not really what I'm asking. I'm asking like, because it's hard because the Bible doesn't say anything about, it doesn't say the word abortion in the Bible. So I'm like, well, okay. So I would write songs
about dashing children against rocks, and that's so much better.
Which God did.
So it's different. It's
yeah. So yeah, God, Old Testament God, bad. New Testament God, good. So yeah, more perspectives. It could be so. Where was I? Oh, so I was trying to write songs from perspectives of people. I have a friend who's a girl, and she happened to get pregnant from somebody in the church. Oopsie. And they ended up deciding to have an abortion and didn't really tell anybody. She told me in confidence. And then, she's like, maybe you can write a song about it to like give voice to that. I'm like, oh my gosh. So that took me a long time to write, and that's on Through Thick and Thin. It's become a song of controversy because I'm saying people think, oh my gosh, you're saying you're just another dude trying to be a voice for the women, or I'm like, no, you don't know anything. And I don't really tell people all the time about what my songs mean because it's art, and I want you to interpret it, and I want you to get pissed off because if you're kind of not, there's this newer saying, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention, if you're not getting mad about something,
I think a lot of people are paying attention
now. More people are paying attention, yes, but more people are paying attention to what I was writing because you're saying, they're like, oh look, he wrote a song about abortion. They're totally pro-life. There's nothing wrong with that. That's cool. And then they dig deeper into the lyrics. They're like, wait a minute, what are you saying here? You're like, wait a minute, you're saying there's options? No, I'm like, dude, she already did this thing. I'm saying, and now I have friends, because now that I'm older and I have kids, I have friends now who can't have babies. They would have loved to have had her baby as, they would adopt it and raise it with her, all this kind of stuff. There's all these options, and those are two sides of the spectrum. There's everything in between too. And I'm not saying one or the other. There's good and bad. I mean, it's just this whole huge topic, and that's just one of my songs. And that just happens to be one of, like, I guess a larger topic or whatever. But I was talking about people, like, I was talking in conversation songs, like, this person has a question about heaven and hell, and the Christian's like, well, everything's hunky dory. If you're saved, you're saved. That's it, man. Easy peasy. Christians have an easy life. And then the person's like, wait a minute, and that was in a song, and that made some people angry too. I'm like, I want answers, and I'm trying to get answers through my 2-minute punk rock song.
Yeah. You got to keep it to 2 minutes too. Otherwise.
Yeah. Once I got 3 minutes, then I was selling out. I don't know.
Exactly.
So, and this is all before I turned 21.
Well, it's like you're fleshing out things, having conversations through music that really should have happened at church. Like, we should have had those discussions at church.
Would have been nice.
It was more important to, like, communicate that this is our stance, this is right, and that is wrong. And, like, we don't need to go into a lot of details about it. There's no discussion to be had. Life begins at conception, and that's it. I think my church had a lot of those, and it was confusing. I think because there's that saying within evangelicalism that, like, well, Christianity's not a religion, it's a relationship. It's not a list of rights and wrongs and a list of rules. And it's like, well, all we really talk about is the rules. Like, that's what I remember the most. When I think about, like, sermons, I try to think about, what do I remember people talking about at church? And, like, the vast majority of it was the rules. That's what we talked about, especially in a youth setting.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many messages about, like, garbage in, garbage out. What are you watching on TV and listening to? And, you really think it's all right for you to have that CD or,
The Purge.
I love
throw all the CDs out.
Yeah, the rhetorical questions are always hilarious. It's like, have you prayed about that? Do you think that's what you should be doing? Like,
we're not going to tell you shouldn't have a Linkin Park CD, but we don't want you to enjoy it. How's that?
We'll ruin it for you. We will ruin it for you.
The only people who masturbate are in hell. Nobody does that. So if you're doing that, I mean, you're just sinning. So you shouldn't even be at church.
If you're listening to Linkin Park at the same time.
Whoa.
Then you are in a world of trouble.
I know.
Become so numb.
To be honest, I feel like a lot of sympathy and empathy for youth pastors sometimes, because they got a hard job. The main pastor is like, he's the big dog, he can say whatever, and people are like, ha ha ha, or like, oh, he's just saying, blah, he's just saying something crazy about ladies, whatever, or, oh, that was a really good sermon. But the youth pastor has to, like, entertain, babysit, counsel, like, do all this stuff, depending on how big or small the staff is or whatever. And sometimes it's just a high schooler that just graduated. They don't know much more than the people they're teaching or whatever. But I've seen a lot of people really thrive in that setting. But, like, I've seen some people really crash too. It's so hard.
And then it really is, like, too, because good.
Like, if they deviate really at all from, like, the very basic rules and regulations, talking points, and stuff like that, then there's an angry parent there complaining. It's just like being a teacher. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to be a teacher and have all these parents with opinions about how they're teaching this and how they're teaching that. And,
I feel like it's worse for
pastors the
coaches.
same way.
There's a lot.
feel
There's
like-
a lot of parents. Yeah.
Like I feel like a lot of teachers, like I don't know how much. I mean, outside of what you see on the news of like Texas parents hating critical race theory or something, but like if it's in general, I feel like teachers, like people just send their kids to school and then they come home. But I feel like if
Babysitting.
you're a coach, you have to deal with so much shit about like why aren't you playing my kid more? Like, oh, that would be I think being a coach sounds
The
awful.
possibility of children's sports is like the biggest deterrent to having children for me. Like I cannot think of anything worse than having to sit through Pee Wee football games.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do they do that anymore because of concussions and shit?
I'm sure there. Yeah. There's, what's it called? Pop Warner and stuff.
Yeah.
But I did 1 week of football in high school and I burst my appendix. So I stopped forever. Ouch. Thanks a lot, Jason Rainey.
Ooh.
Blasted my appendix.
Up by
We'll tag
name.
I was a tight end. I just looked over there like he's sitting next to me. He is sitting next to me. Anyways, yeah. So I was just trying to have those questions and answers. But what was crazy is I was talking to myself because I was singing them and doing the questions and the answers at the same time instead of two people singing or whatever. And sometimes I was talking to God because I'm like, dude, God, WTF, bro. Or sometimes I'd be talking in another person's voice, like the girl in the song, or the other person who isn't saved but wants, has questions about church because all of your friends go to church, but you just, you have questions, so you don't want to go or whatever, or your family was raised in a different way and they don't really, I don't know. There's all these things that I was trying to just basically I was like, I'll be the voice. I will be your voice. I will be your pen and paper, and I will put this on music and I will sing this song for you. And then, but outwardly, it just sounded like I was being all pious, or I was being all obtuse with the church, like I didn't appreciate how I was raised or something like that, because I don't know why. I don't know if we if we are teaching this, like, I mean, actually, we probably are teaching this in church, is like, it's okay. It's just super okay to judge people. It's just super okay to judge his art or her art or their decisions, because the Bible told the pastor told the youth pastor told you, or your parents told you, or whatever. But it just drove me wild. And then so every night on stage, if we would preach a message or say something positive about church or whatever, I'd be like, don't take my word for it. Go find out for yourself. Go read the Bible, or go find an author that writes about theology, or talk to your favorite pastor or youth pastor. I'm just up here saying kind of what I believe, what I know about church, or what I've learned. And I've had a lot of experiences that you might not have had. Like, if you might have grown up awesome in an awesome church. I mean, not you two. I mean, I'm talking to like a crowd of people, or you two, whatever. But you might have a completely different church experience than me. So I might be saying something that's totally foreign to you. You might have been like, what? Church is amazing. I've had the best life. My parents are married. I got siblings that love me. Nobody's ever been molested or drugs in my house or anything like that. If everything's awesome, being a Christian's awesome. I'm like, awesome, dude. That's really cool. I'm glad for you. I'm not saying that that's bad, or like I hate you for that. And you shouldn't hate me for my upbringing. You shouldn't judge me. But, like I said, somewhere along the line, somewhere along us youths, we got taught that it's okay to judge people for not believing what we believe.
Yeah. It's such a weird time too, because when you're young and you're 16, 17, it's like, go find out for yourself. It's like you already think you know things because of the world you live in. So like, it's like a level of like Stockholm syndrome with it. Like when people might have, there's plenty of people who loved their experience, and then later on were just like, oh, I think I'm done. Even if they don't have like a huge, like, something awful happened reason. And of course, some people just like roll with it for a while. But it is so funny to think back on like those times, because I remember as a kid going to shows. This is like I feel like this is a conversation that a lot of people go back and forth on. If you grew up in the Christian world, it's like some people were like never wanted to hear a vocalist say anything. Like, it's like,
Mhm.
don't preach, don't just, I'm here to
Yeah.
watch you do music. And then
Just
there
rock and roll, baby.
are people like me who are like, I want someone to say something that's going to validate my worldview. It was like really what I was after. So whenever people did say stuff, I was like, I would just go in hard for this. Like, oh yeah, that was a great show. And just like, did you hear that? Did you get that? Was a good. And then my friends who were also Christians were like, why do you need that? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, but out of either that point of view or their point of view, out of one of those two, became like the, I don't know, the impetus of the whole kind of Christian punk scene. At least from my eyes, I could see why some bands would want to get out of that or stop doing that scene or whatever, and going, mainstream or secular or whatever the Christian kids wanted to say, like, oh, they stopped, carrying or whatever. It's like, or you drove him out, a little bit. Let's go. Let's think about both ways. Maybe,
definitely so that I'm sure
they were losing. I don't know. Or I mean, it's just, it can be very guilt driven. Like, oh man, am I even going to be allowed to like be myself at this show because everyone's going to be judging me for, if I'm wearing a secular band shirt or whatever, or like, we showed up with a sticker on our van that says like, something about we are supportive of my gay friend or whatever. It's like, ostracized, get out of our scene, I could find that really hard. There was definitely a point in like, maybe, I don't know, message board time, MySpace time, where it was like, what's this band even doing anymore? They don't, they didn't say the right thing off stage, or Josh's new lyrics don't have the right message. I was like, oh man, well, prove me wrong. You write a song and let's compare, or something like that. Like, let's go toe to toe with what you're saying. Or are you just saying this because it sounds cool to be so super judgy,
The onset of internet heckling with MySpace. It's like the first time fans got to say their fucking piece publicly.
we got in trouble for I was part of the May 1st, like the May Day boycott kind of thing down here in Southern California with like rights for farm workers. We were like, hey, Dogwood supports the boycott, whatever. Like, I'm down for the farm workers. Like, I support living wages. I support, and I think Jesus would too. And we got shafted by on MySpace. Like, I'm not going to listen to your music anymore. I'm not going to, you part of the boycott. I'm like, well, okay, you go do their job, see how much money it's worth. Or like, it was almost like a dumb argument. I didn't even want to argue back, but there was some I just had to respond to,
Yeah,
it's
you're talking farmers, and a bunch of teenagers act like they have to go out and buy fucking groceries, and they're going to spend an extra 30 cents on tomatoes because they got a raise. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. I think the main person who was arguing was like, I was like, not even a teenager. I think it was like a person older than me too. Like, oh wow, blah blah. And this kind of was pre, immigration arguments and stuff like that. This was like
they took our jobs.
This was kind of the start of that. Yeah, like, it's okay. Well, if they boycott, then who's doing the work? So that was just one instance. That was a small protest. That was a small, we were supporting like human rights basically. We were supporting people who were just trying to live and really support our country. And they're like, I'm throwing away your music. I'm like, go ahead. I don't care.
You already bought it. We win, dummy.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Yeah, I was like, oh my God. But at that point, it's just disenchanting, and I could see how other bands would be like, you know what, guys, yeah, let's go in that direction or something like that.
Yeah.
So
what ended up like? I mean, you did. How long did Dogwood run for?
So let's see. I would say we were full time. Like, we were pretty serious full time. A good like 14 years or so.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So is that just did it come to its natural conclusion then after 14 years?
I think so. I think so. Like, just people, because the core lineup started, somebody got sick of playing. So, somebody would leave and go do another band or move away or different career. And then, and another thing
Sales.
with us, another thing with us was we never really did tour support. Like, we never really went on other people's tours. It was always like Dogwood going on tour and taking other bands out. So we never really got to kind of be the smaller band, I guess, if you will. Not that we were ever like huge, but we were always going out our own club shows or whatever, and we were touring a lot, but it was never really like massive big shows because it was like just us and taking out newer bands or whatever. So that was kind of one thing where it was like, okay, we're going to get, a little bit less and less or whatever. I don't know. That was one contributing factor to something, but also maybe just people just finally totally decided they hated my lyrics or the music. I don't know. So yeah. And then we just did after that, just, some songs for the record. And then just kind of said, okay, well, whatever, we'll just take it easy.
Yeah. What was, was that it for you for a little while for music? Were you just, what year was that actually? Let me set that
I don't even know. That must have been maybe stopped touring full time in like, I would say 03, 04. Okay. Would be like kind of maybe even 05, 06. I don't totally remember when the last continental tour was, but yeah, probably around that time. And then just wrote a couple songs here and there, singles, different compilations off that were not on Tooth and Nail and stuff. But I never really stopped writing stuff like music or words or anything like that. And I've always been singing on other people's tracks or other records, kind of a featured artist or or just contributing vocal ideas or something like that. So I've always tried to keep those muscles built, like so they don't my musical muscle memory doesn't atrophy or anything like that. I want to keep that active because it's my outlet and it's my it's one of my quote unquote God-given talents. Not that I was good in the beginning, but I feel like I kind of know how to do it now. And to help other people do it. So it's fun. But now I also just turned that into kind of cooking and podcasting,
Yeah, which I'm curious about that too. So
woo,
you have a cooking podcast. How long have you, so before you started I'm guessing cooking was a venture for a while, but you're a food guy.
Yeah. Podcast is fairly new. 2020, early 2020 is when I started that. I was already listening to shows, but I was like, man, a lot of people I know, because on tour, also when I was early tours, first tours, I remember watching videos of our first tours. It's like I was cooking in someone's backyard because we'd stop at someone's house or a show, whatever, have a day off, barbecue, or go to a fast food place on the road. Everyone goes to like Subway or McDonald's or truck stops, but we try to get a couple of things and then I would like kind of make new things or whatever, like, customizations at Subway or whatever. Like
cook chicken and flaming hot Doritos and then throw it in
do all that crazy stuff. All the crazy stuff that kind of people do on viral videos now is like kind of, we're already doing that middle of nowhere, like, middle of the night, ordering stupid things at the, whatever Steak and Shake or whatever, and like putting stuff together that wasn't on the menu, stuff. So like just trying to survive on the road and eat whatever you can eat is like kind of another way to view food as the culinary world as a punk rock, ethos, kind of paving your own way. Like I don't think, well, maybe I would, but I don't know if I would ever see the Clash eating at McDonald's. Or you know what I mean? Like if I was to do a food pairing of bands and food, I would not pair the Clash with McDonald's, because it'd be like anti-establishment. McDonald's is like big pharma, big government, so like we're not going to touch that, or we're going to rally against that. We're going to go. We'll just starve, whatever. And which we did. We starved on the road sometimes, but whatever. Some Subway workers took pity on us. But then like cooking would be or I'd get a job when we'd come home from tour, and that would be in the food world, the culinary world. I would be working at a cafe, or I was a busboy or a barista or anything like that, but then we'd go out on tour again. So I couldn't really maintain a lot of work that way. So I wasn't really honing my chef skills between tours, but just learning stuff here and there, just basically survival skills, but I mean, but touring continentally, like Mexico, Canada, Alaska, all the way across the United States, there is a lot of different cultures and dialects and people and food. So I was learning a ton without even knowing it, without even realizing it. Like, Southern California, like even San Diego specifically at the time, it was a kind of a a scene of just like, tacos and burritos, Mexican food, basically the taco shops, taquerias, like, corner trucks and stuff like that. Then you go out to Arizona, and then you start getting into like Waffle House territory, and you keep traveling further and further east, and then it's like, you're into Texas, then it's like, oh my God, all this giant beef barbecue brisket, smoking stuff. And then you keep going and going and going, so on and so forth, Louisiana, seafood boils. And then you go into Florida, and there's Cuban food. So like all this other regional cuisines that I was learning about just from traveling with the band. And I was like, dang, so cool. And that, this is before I started reading cookbooks, and like there was no Food Network, so it was very inspiring to me as growing up and having, I like having food in our family and doing all these cookouts and stuff like that. Is like my love for food and music. There was always music playing at the carne asada cookout or anything like that. There's always loud, obnoxious music playing, like, especially at the Mexican parties. We would go into late into the night, and the music was loud, and the neighbors weren't pissed off. They were there with you, boom, 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 boom. And there's carne asada and hot tortillas and all this stuff. And so that was a really highlight of my life, is learning that without knowing it. That's a music and food pairing, is like those parties, loud music, and then going to high school parties, loud music. Dogwood played a lot of high school parties and skate parties and stuff like that. Loud music, not so much food, more like beer and stuff like that. But, there was some pairings without knowing it, and it
pairs really well with keg stands.
I mean, we've been at a couple of those parties for sure. One time we had to like get the cops to come because I had broken my toe or something like that, and we were trapped in, and it was a half pipe party, so everyone's kind of parked around the half pipe, and there was, it was like a triple kegger, man, up in the hills of like, somewhere, and we couldn't get out. I couldn't get out of the show. We played a little bit. My toe was just like, there's just like blood everywhere or something. Like, I don't know, get me out of here. I remember that was a long time ago, but dang, that sucks. But yeah, so culinary stuff is, I don't know how I got totally into like chefdom, but doing nonprofit work, is trying to, I guess, stay in the eyes of doing good work, helping others, loving your neighbor would be like working in nonprofits. So we worked in a lot of nonprofits. Excuse me. My wife and I, we moved up to San Francisco to start this nonprofit restaurant training program for, incarcerated youth and foster kids and stuff like that, showing them awesome. How to work in the culinary world, how to maintain jobs, how to prevent recidivism, so they wouldn't go back to juvenile hall and stuff like that. And what is in San Francisco? Restaurants. So so our nonprofit was just, it was called Old School Cafe, and it was basically a 1920s jazz supper club, like a Harlem jazz supper club. And so all these kids from the hood would come in here for training, and we'd dress them up. They had like really nice outfits, like, Harlem Renaissance kind of thing. So bow ties and red suspenders and nice hats and old microphones. And it was a full on jazz club. And so we were doing food and music as a training program up in San Francisco, and it's still up there. It's still running. It's still a nonprofit. They partner up there with the Warriors and stuff like that. And they're still thriving. They're still keeping youth out of prisons and stuff like that. And that was something that we built together. And I still talk to some of my students to this day who are still chefs now. But what was really cool about that was it was definitely a music venue. There was music every night. It was all youth run. I mean, there was adults because we had to train them, but we tried to empower them to run the whole thing. So like the MC, the musicians, everything from the host to the chef, it was all 16 to 24-year-olds. And so it kind of reminded me of like doing the punk rock stuff, doing the tours and stuff like that. Like as a 16 to 24-year-old, learning about the world through whoever your mentor is, and then finding out on your own. So we would try to help them get a job. Like we would do a stage at like Google or Twitter for a week or whatever, or because San Francisco has all those companies. Mm-hmm. So we would go cooking and try to get work at the music venues that had food. So it was pouring out of my heart that it was always music and food pairings. It was always music and food together. Those are the things that stir the soul, is those two things together, either separately or together even better. And so then I just kept doing that when I moved to San Diego. Worked for another nonprofit. We started a cafe training program, so barista program, learning coffee and stuff like that. So, and then that's still going down in San Diego. So, There's these
Nice.
nonprofits things. So I just took kind of that and then took it in the next level and just did chef stuff. That's because I learned a ton in San Francisco and LA and stuff like that from chefs. So I loved it.
That's cool, man. I like that concept of pairing music and food. I'm trying to think. I want to like if I was
It's
going to
fun.
throw out some foods, like, or what are some of the ones that you've immediately come to mind of like
Well, the
foods that you
easiest,
pair with certain
yeah,
music?
the
Other than the ones
easiest
you mentioned.
example is like if you guys can picture either your favorite food establishments or coffee shops or restaurants or breweries or whatever, you probably like them partially because they have a good soundtrack, maybe.
If it's a brewery, chances are it's like Fish, Grateful Dead, something like that. I feel like that's
Oh, you need to find some new breweries, man.
I
Just
mean,
kidding.
it goes hand in hand with breweries around here.
Some of them do. Yeah, some of them do for sure. But like down in, there's a couple here in San Diego that are they're based around punk rock. There's like, a couple that I can think of that are like Fall and Three Punk Ales. They're all their walls are covered with like punk rock posters and stuff like that.
Nice, that's cool.
So their soundtrack, even some of our songs will come up in their soundtrack sometimes. But like, or your favorite restaurant or coffee shop or whatever, like I was saying, because you sit there, you're vibing without even knowing it. Maybe they're playing something lo-fi or like old school hip hop or jazz or whatever, and people like that. Or you have an experience from when you were growing up, either growing up Christian or whatever the case may be, your favorite like Tooth and Nail artist or whatever, and like you guys used to go out in your truck and turn it up, and you'd go get like a Pepsi or Mountain Dew and play video games all night,
Yeah.
or after the concert, we'd go out to like Denny's or Waffle House or whatever you got in your area, Shoney's, and then we stayed up till like 4 a.m, and then I found the love of my life after this concert or something like that. So like there's these experiences that you had in your life, or a lot of people just think about like the big ones are like Christmas, Thanksgiving, the big meals where everyone kind of knows what the food's going to be, or, West Texas barbecue or something like that. So like, then when you go into a barbecue place, they're playing blues, and why is that? It's because a lot of people think that St. Louis, home of barbecue, home of the blues, those kind of go hand in hand, So like there's certain things that you already know in your head that might go well together. Or a lot of the people now that I talk to on my show are people from the music industry who now own restaurants or bars or coffee shops or breweries or distilleries, stuff like that, wineries. Or I talk to like my favorite band is like Good Riddance. And the two of the guys, one guy, the bass player, owns a crepe place, and one guy is a wine sales director at a winery up there. So there's all these connections between the industries. So like those are kind of things that kind of pair already together. But if I was to tell you, if I was to make a menu, or I sell tickets to one of my beer pairing dinners where I'm pairing beer and food together, but I make a playlist for that. I don't tell everyone, all the time that I'm making a playlist, but when I say, here's how you taste the beer, here's what I made for the food, and now I have this song that's going to play while you eat and drink your food. Eat your food and drink your drink. And I'm going to tell you how to taste everything together, so you'll never you compare it. But then I'm going to play this song. Maybe it's Tribe Called Quest, or maybe it's whatever, it's Dogwood or Quicksand or whatever. And now next time you have this pale ale or this halibut, you're not going to ever forget that you heard this song. Or you're gonna hear this Quicksand album and you're gonna think of my food because we did this.
Go out and buy halibut,
or whatever the case may be. Or I had the best carnitas tacos I ever had because I was listening to this, or there was this song playing, and I'm never gonna forget that experience. It was the best song. The song sounded better. The beer tasted better. The food tasted insane, and the chef was funny. Or whatever. So that's just kind of one example. If there's a theme like that where I'm saying, hey, I got this new Be Well record, I want to put it on, and we're gonna drink this new whiskey, or whatever the case may be, stuff like that.
That's cool, man. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a fun thing.
So that's kind of what we do on the show, a little to some degree, depending on who I'm talking to.
Yeah, man, that's really cool. The nonprofit thing that you've talked about, all kind of different directions you've gone in, the way you've kind of kept your foot in the music industry. It's you've gone a lot of different directions, man. It's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm still trying, I still do songs every once in a while with whoever wants to collab with me. I'll just, St. Didacus will put out a track or something like that, because I can only sing. I don't play drums or bass or anything like that. So I'm like, who wants to do this with me? So I get a couple friends, and lately we've, been doing it with this. I still have Danny from Dogwood still playing with me. He does guitar and records me and stuff like that. So we've been long time collaborators. And then goes from there, Mike and Joe and whoever else.
Nice. Dude,
Yeah.
before we get out of here, one of the things we usually like get into that we kind of skirted over a little bit is it sounds like
Christianity.
you still have we talked about your upbringing in it, but like we usually kind of finish or at some point get to where people are at now, and it sounds like
Yeah, that
you
makes
kind of
sense.
still have you do have a foot in the door with it still, that you might feel like
It's
what I'm picking up
complicated.
on.
I would say it's complicated because of what I know, and then like the complication comes from that, when you get that glimmer of doubt and the doubt starts to become your God, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna explore this. The hipsters call it, or the hip Christians call it, deconstruction and reconstruction and all this kind of stuff. I'm sure it's come up on the show before.
No,
But
never.
like,
It's so weird.
how long, there's no rules. How long can you deconstruct? How long does it take to reconstruct? And then, because growing up Christian is the foundation, bro. And then you deconstruct it and you reconstruct it, and here you are. But when things happen in my life, like if my son, almost dies when he's born, I'm like, oh, where's God in that? The fuck, man? Or like, other things happen to my family, and I don't even do well if my wife gets sick or my kids get a cold. I'm like, dude, this sucks. What the hell, man? But then, there's obviously other crazier, bigger things happening in the world than just my narrow, myopic vision of like what's good and what's bad. But we're human, and I'm thinking about myself, so I'm like, dude, God, just fix this. Magic God, happen now, but I've always had this, like we said earlier, this relationship, this weird dynamic relationship, because like, God's the perfect father, but because like for all of us who had a broken home, and father left at birth, and then I got divorced when I was in middle of high school, and well, now God is your father. It's like, well, I mean,
God doesn't know how to throw a baseball. So.
That's what I was gonna say that. I was literally gonna say that. I was like, I don't know, should I say baseball right now? I mean, obviously I love baseball, but like, I think that I've had valleys, that walk through the valley of the shadow, all this kind of stuff. But I've always also sang about it, and call Dogwood a Christian band or music or whatever. I don't care. It's punk rock. It's music. But I was always singing from the heart. Like I was trying to say, this is what I'm dealing with. I'm sure there's other people out there dealing with the same thing. I'm sure there's other youth pastors who don't have all the answers for these things that I'm telling their kids to think about. I'm positive that, God, however you view God, he, she, all being, all knowing, all powerful, whatever. I just talked to our old bass player, Sean Beatty. He's now a PhD doctor, church pastor. He's like, I believe that everyone does have a purpose in life, and whatever you think or believe about heaven and hell or Christianity, it's like once you die, either you're right about there not being God and you just die and that's it, or you're oh wait, did I get that right? Anyways, either you die and that's it, or you die and there's something else. Like that's kind of really all there is to it. You die and that's it, or you die and there's something else. So how good can you be while you're alive? Like I view it as, I like to be a follower of like what Jesus taught me, not like what Christianity is supposed to be or whatever. Because if a person like my dad or Donald Trump or like Mark Driscoll are quote unquote Christians, then where does that leave me? Like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to fall into that category. I don't want people to think Christianity and think like, oh, well, that's kind of, those guys kind of do ugly things, or, in the name of whatever. So I want to be like, well, here's a bunch of food I made for you, because that's what Jesus would do, for my neighbors who are sick or pregnant, and they're not Christian. They're like, why are you doing this or whatever, in their heads. I'm like, I'm just being nice because that's what my mom taught me. That's what Jesus says to do, love the poor, love others. I don't always vibe with the verse, love your neighbor like you love yourself, because some people don't love themselves, you know what I mean? Like self-care is a big thing now. Self-care is definitely a big thing now. But like I always thought like, well, what if you hate yourself, then what does that mean for your neighbors?
It means you're off the hook,
motherfucker. but also for me, like I said, growing up, and there was a lot of good in the church that surrounded us, like when my mom needed them, and when I needed help and growing up in the church and stuff like that. I think that I would like to pay that back to the world, to people, but giving back, like, dude, you need something. I got an extra bike in my garage. Take it. I don't care. You you don't have money to pay me to sing on your record, I'll sing. I don't care. Like different kinds of things. So I still do like a lot of, and I think that's kind of why I do a lot of the nonprofit and charitable work, is because it's my kind of way, because I did a spiritual gifting test in high school, and my gifts were hospitality and teaching, like both of those. And I think that's kind of cool in a sense that I kind of view my view of Jesus was like that. Like he was very hospitabile, water to wine at the party for 7 days, the Last Supper, everything in the Bible.
That's why you guys start doing keg parties. I love it.
I'm down. I haven't done them, but like everything that revolved around Jesus was like, he was all about women. Like not a womanizer, but he was everything. he when raised from the dead, who does he see first? Women, or his mom sees him at the cross, whatever. And then all of his stories are also revolving around food. Like his big stories, his first miracle and his Last Supper, were all big food stories. So I've always kind of taken that to heart as well for my own journey in that. So cool. I can't speak for all the world of Christianity, but what I can say for my own journey is that it's a complicated one, but I just really try to live the good part of Jesus,
mm-hmm.
Which is
I
hard.
like that. I like the way that it's like hit you. I like the way that it's influenced your, the directions you've gone in, as far as like, you just mentioned food, and the way that a lot of what Jesus did was around food and taking that to heart. I think that's cool. I think it's allowed for you to find, it looks like it's allowed for you to find like just unique outlets and bring your life in a direction that's not so common as you kind of pair all these different things together.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah,
I think it's fun. So
I want to make a memory for the kids, like a legacy of. Also, another thing is with my relationship with Jesus, like what do I show the kids? What am I showing my kids? What am I leaving? Like that guy was either the way I talk about my stepdad, like, oh, that guy sucks, or wow, that guy did a lot of good for the neighbors and for our family and blah, blah, and sacrifices. Like, oh yeah. So that's, and I feel like that's a part of it too, is the legacy that we leave.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. Dude, so where can people find you? I know you're on Instagram, because that's where I found you.
Hi, I'm in San Diego. I'm a chef at Harvest Kitchen in San Diego. I'm on Instagram. I am on Instagram. If you're looking for the podcast, it's The Family Cast. Food and Music is Life. Yes. And my personal is Josh Kemble, Kemb. Those are my two main things that I do. And then I'm on Twitter too, but that's more for like, I'm mainly talking to musicians and other stuff like that, because Twitter can be a real black hole.
Oh yeah. We've talked about that a lot.
I did it today. I was like, what am I doing? I spent like the last 10 minutes looking at like just school shootings and politics. I'm like, I hate that kind of stuff. So anyways, I am, mainly those two things, the Family Cast and my personal one. So personal one's all about kids and chinchillas and food. And then the other one's podcast stuff and lots of record collecting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. I was waiting for you to go, Casey.
Oh, Casey G.
Sorry. We got crossed wires there.
He's the closeout king.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, Josh. Really appreciate it. And check out Josh's social media, his podcast, and we will see you next time.